What is the carnivore diet? Who should be eating it and why?
Yeah, big questions. So the carnivore diet is whatever we want to make it, but the ideas for a carnivore diet grew out of the sentiments that you expressed there. This idea that, I went to medical school at the University of Arizona, residency at the University of Washington. Before I went to medical school, I was a PA in cardiology, and through all of it, I was just pissed. I was just freaking angry at what I saw around me, which was people suffering without any real attention within mainstream Western medicine toward the actual root cause of their illness. And this isn't because physicians are not intelligent or not well intentioned. It's because the paradigm and sort of the propaganda machine that we're built into or indoctrinated into as physicians in our training is that, we are doctors, we fix things with medications and flashy procedures and special imaging, and we change the spin of protons with MRIs, and we are essentially like the new shamans and these necromancers, right? We're these wizards with these special potions and these magical things. And I was always kind of like, this is bullshit, like we're missing the most important piece, which is obviously the concordance or discordance between our genetics and our environment. And the big piece of that I always wanted to focus on, not exclusively, but predominantly, was nutrition. And I've always been fascinated by what are all these molecules that are coming into our bodies and how do they affect us? And so I wanted to try and understand, how can we align that? Is it different for you than it is for me? Is it different for a woman than it is for this collection of men in this podcast? Is it different for someone from a different part of the world? Or is there some sort of fundamental sort of programming, right? This, quote, ancestral story that lies within our genetics that is really common for all of us, and sort of the nuance is all built on top of that. And so as I went down this rabbit hole myself, I did Paleolithic diets, which are pretty similar to what they're describing with your CrossFit folks in the past. That idea, that's pretty paleo. And that starts to ask the same questions, like where have we come from as humans? What is built into our genetics? What is built into our book of life? And what does that really say? What does an instruction manual say for a human? But it didn't work for me totally. My eczema continued throughout the whole thing. And I thought, okay, there's got to be more. And at one point I heard Jordan Peterson on a podcast, and he said, I'm only eating meat. And my first reaction was, that's crazy. Like, you can't just eat meat. I too had been indoctrinated that there were these magical compounds in vegetables or plants that we needed as humans to be optimal. And yet I was curious. And because I'm the type of guy that just wants to do everything, I thought, I don't know if I believe this, but I'm going to do it. And so much like you, I just dove in, got rid of all the plants in my diet, and was eating meat and liver and organs and fat. And I started out with honey, and then I got rid of honey after a week. We can talk about that sort of carb, no carb discussion as well. And lo and behold, I felt really good. My eczema resolved and never recurred for the 3 years since that point. And since then, I've had a lot of kind of right turns and left turns and nuance and, I'd say revisions and upgrades, or just, continue to think about the paradigm of how we can align diet and nutrition and genetics for humans. But simplistically, a carnivore diet is an animal-based diet. It's a diet that's either entirely, or in my opinion, mostly made up of animal meat and organs and fat. And so wrapped into this are all these important concepts about the way that our ancestors have always eaten animals. They eat the whole animal. We can talk about this, nose to tail. So when I first wrote the Carnivore Code, my book, and I first started doing a carnivore diet, it was all animal products. There was no bread, there was no avocados, there was really meat, mostly ruminant red meat, organs like liver, other organs like heart, fat like suet, which is the kidney fat, salt, and water. And that was interesting to me. And then I kind of went through further iterations and thought about it a little more and went down rabbit holes and kind of had these kind of off ramps and these modifications. But that's the answer to your question in a long-winded form. It's a diet that, in my opinion, is exclusively or mostly based on animal foods, and we can talk about why I think that's important.
When I first started, a friend of mine had a cow, and he killed his cow, and I bought a bunch of ground beef from him, and I was basically just eating ground beef and hard cheeses. And I did that for 2 weeks, and something wasn't I was free from chasing sugar, which was like mind-boggling at the age of 48 to be like, I couldn't actually believe the psychological change. Like I wasn't chasing glucose all day. Like I don't even think most people realize they're chasing glucose all day. But when I got free from it, and then I basically had to remind myself to eat in the morning. My wife would be like, hey, there's leftover eggs here. Do you want them? And I'd be like, I guess I better eat. But